All right, we have an interesting opponent this week, so we're just going to get right into it. Folks, we're taking on the Dancing Eevees, and I don't know if I've ever seen a draft team's name match up as closely to what it actually drafted. Not only do they have Eevee right here, but they also have a ton of Pokemon with a dance theme to them, Quaquaval and Hisuian Lilligant in particular, both based on dancers, and Oricorio, but also a ton of dance moves that they can use. Quiver Dance, Aqua Step, Victory Dance, Dragon Dance. And in their replays so far, they've very often taken advantage of Oricorio's Dancer ability with these moves. So if you're unfamiliar, Oricorio is maybe a bit of an obscure Pokemon. Its ability, when its partner uses a dance move, its ability causes it to use the same move in addition to its own move for the turn. So it uses two moves, one of which is repeating its partner's move. That could be, again, Aqua Step or Dragon Dance or whatever, but what I've seen them do in a lot of the replays so far is they have Volcarona use Quiver Dance. That then causes Oricorio to use Quiver Dance, and then in the same turn, Oricorio uses its own Quiver Dance. It also runs Quiver Dance on its set and uses that as well as the one that it's copying from Volcarona. So it gets to +2, and it can attack in its own right, or it can baton pass the boosts out to something. So that's the main thing that they were going for clearly with their draft, the dance mode, you can call it. They also have good pieces for a sun mode. Vulpix can set the sun, and then Volcarona can take advantage with boosted fire attacks, and Hisuian Lilligant with Chlorophyll. They have a pretty solid fire, water, grass core in Volcarona, Quaquaval, and Hisuian Lilligant. They have strong support pieces to plug in around them with Scrafty and Quagsire to fill in the gaps. I haven't even mentioned Goodra yet, which is just a very strong Pokemon all around. It can go bulky, it can go offensive. It makes for an excellent baton pass recipient for like any kind of stat boost, but I would say especially for Quiver Dance. And then Quiver Dance baton pass into Vikavolt is also very threatening in some situations. Florges is a good support piece. I have no idea what Eevee does. I don't know if they'll ever bring it. All that said, those are the pluses for their team. But in terms of thinking about how to attack it, I looked over this matchup, and the first thing I thought was, who here wants to take a Psyblade? I mean, Scrafty is the answer, but who else? I don't think anyone else here wants to take a Psyblade. So the first Pokemon we're bringing this week is Iron Leaves, back from a surprise 1-week hiatus, and ready to spam boosted Psyblades into the opponent's team again. Only coverage move I felt like I needed this week was Sacred Sword, to pick up the Scrafty or any random Terra Dark, or Steel, I guess. Otherwise, didn't feel strongly about the third move, so I decided to bring a Dance of my own. We'll fight Dance with Dance, and see if we can beat them at their own game with Swords Dance. The Eevees, so it's Quark Drive is boosting speed on this set, because otherwise Iron Leaves is naturally slower than Hisuian Lilligant, even without the Chlorophyll boost. And I do want to get the jump on that. So kind of the same theory as with Iron Treads last week. Given the gap between Iron Leaves' attack and speed stats, if I want to run a speed booster set, I probably should always run max speed so that I can get as much attack investment as I can without taking the boost away. So 156 attack EVs with max speed means the attack stat is 1 point lower than the speed stat. Hopefully it'll still hit hard enough, and maybe the Swords Dance will help to make up for that. There are a couple of changes that I made very last minute to this set. When I started working on the images here, I had Terra Fairy and a Lumberry for the item. The reason to choose Fairy over Fire, it still turns the double bug weakness into a resistance, which is very helpful into Volcarona and Vikavolt, but it opens up fewer new weaknesses for this opponent to attack. Things like Goodra, well, not so much Goodra because it gets poison coverage, but things like Quagsire for sure and Quaquaval have a harder time attacking a Fairy type than they do a Fire type. And so kind of like in VGC, Fairy type had a lot of value as a neutral defensive type here. And then I had the Lumberry to avoid a burn from mostly Flame Body Volcarona, maybe like a Will-O-Wisp on something like Volcarona or Vulpix. And of course, Iron Leaves is unaffected by Lilligant's powder moves before it terastallizes, but after it terastallizes, there are those to worry about as well. But as I thought it over throughout the day, as I was getting ready to record this, I decided I probably wanted booster energy on this set. I am bringing electric terrain this week. I do want those boosted side blades, but as you'll see in a moment, electric terrain is not necessarily my priority, and so there may be situations where I haven't managed to get the terrain up, or I've chosen something else over it, and I still want that speed boost. I still want that jump on Hisui and Lilligant. I don't want to take a straight pollen puff or something. So the booster energy feels like the overall more useful play, at least useful in more situations than the Lumberry is. And with that in mind, I did switch to Terra Fire so that I can avoid a burn that way. Next up is Thunderous, and I've really fallen into a pattern of bringing bulky Thunderous with a Covert Cloak. I thought about just slapping the same thing on again this week, and part of the reason I didn't is that I'm pretty sure at this point my opponents expect me to just bring Covert Cloak, and I might as well take advantage of that at some point while I can. After bouncing back and forth between rain and electric terrain, I have for the first time brought both this week. I figure if Tornadus can do Tailwind and Rain Dance, spare half its move slots for that in VGC, then I might as well give this a try with Thunderous. So taking advantage from VGC, taking inspiration, from VGC Tornadus again there. Rain is arguably the priority here because of some of the other Pokemon that you'll see further down the team, which is why I did build my Iron Leaves set for the possibility that I don't get electric terrain up, but I do want those boosted side blades, probably, at least in a game, if I can get them. But getting back to the item, I figure I can, if there's any time I can get away with not running Covert Cloak, it's now, and their only fake out user is Scrafty anyway, which is a good Pokemon, but it's not necessarily going to be facing Thunderous in every situation. And given that the rain is going to be important to some of the other team members, I figured Damp Rock, so it's harder for them to stall out, was the call here. The set is pretty straightforward otherwise, given that they have moves like Aqua Step, Dragon Dance, and Quiver Dance to boost speed. They can even get plus speed quickly on Oricorio, plus 2 speed quickly on Oricorio. I figured I wanted a speed control move, and Scary Face was the call, being accurate, more accurate than Thunder Wave. Oricorio isn't immune to Thunder Wave. It is Pom-Pom style Oricorio, like the image indicated. I don't think I said that out loud yet, but it is an electric type, so I don't have to worry about its Thunder Wave immunity with Scary Face. It's just a pretty safe speed control option to enable Iron Leaves or somebody else to get past a boosted threat and break through, and then Wild Bolt Storm is, of course, good spammable stab that has been kind to us with paralysis in recent weeks. As usual, I kind of just picked some of the main threats on their team and calced for them. I couldn't tell you exactly what the calcs were. Probably stuff like Goodra and Vikavolt on the special side, and like Quackleval. I did a bunch of Quackleval calcs on the physical side, and a bunch of Volcarona ones on the special side. But this, whatever this was about, it took all the hits that I wanted, and so I just put what was left in the special attack. And I didn't really see a defensive Terra type that I especially wanted on Thunderous this week. The lazy answer is just to bring Steel, which I think I have done a couple times because it covers Thunderous's weaknesses. But they don't really have, they don't have strong ice and rock type attackers. Their team is not super well built to throw those types of attacks off. They can, but I'm not especially worried about it this week. And I decided Terra Electric, 1, turns off both of Thunderous's weaknesses. Anyway, giving it only a weakness to ground, which they also can't target super well except with Quagsire. And it'll give that little bit of a power buff to Wild Bolt Storm. I think it's unlikely that I Terrastalize Thunderous. It's probably the least likely Pokemon to Terrastalize this week. But if I'm going to do it, I didn't really have a better idea than just slapping on Terra Electric. It seems fine here. Up next, for the 4th consecutive week this season, we are bringing off the bench a Pokemon for its season debut, and this week it is Beartick. Beartick, the reason I drafted Beartick, I was pretty open about this, was a Swift Swim Pokemon that isn't a water type and can cover some of the weaknesses of, say, a Thundurus and Barraskewda mode. Goodra is one of those weaknesses. Goodra is a very bulky dragon type that can ruin my day if I try to run rain stuff without Beartick, and so Beartick is here to cover that, as well as just to get off strong, to outspeed their Pokemon with Swift Swim and get off strong hits. Pretty straightforward. I don't have a lot of experience with Beartick, and I was kind of dreading Icicle Crash's accuracy when I was scrolling through its move list in the Teambuilder until I saw that it gets Icicle Spear. Not really any reason not to run Loaded Dice Icicle Spear here. That seems pretty solid. Rock Slide covers Volcarona and Vulpix. The main ice resistances on their team. And then I didn't really know what I wanted in the third slot, but I thought, well, there is a possible Terra type they could have on something that resists both Icicle Spear and Rock Slide, and that's Steel. I could go for like Terra Ground or something, but instead I might as well, if I'm going to be using Beartic mainly in Rain, a Rain boosted Liquidation should be just fine to pick up a random Steel type. The only thing that I have realized since I got out of the Builder is that this is still walled by Terra Steel Quagsire, so we'll just have to hope that we don't get into a 1v1 with that specific set. Ice for the Terra type, there's no point, I think, in running a defensive Terra type on this, so let's just get as much damage as we can out of the Icicle Spear if we're in a position where we want to Trash Slice Beartic. And it's a lot of speed investment, I realize, for a Swift Swim set, but this speed investment means that it is faster than Goodra outside of Rain, which, given that this Beartic isn't here to take hits, it's here to dish them out, I think is an investment worth making. I think Goodra is relatively unlikely to run speed EVs. Maybe it will, but it's not a given with Goodra. And if I get into a situation where I need to break through it outside of Rain, I'll be glad to have this investment. And of course, we'll triple down on the Rain, if you haven't already guessed, with Barraskewda. This one with enough speed investment to be faster than anything on their team, unboosted in neutral weather. So I don't need the Rain to outrun Lilligant as long as they don't have the sun up. Simple Life Orb set, nothing too groundbreaking here. Psychic Fangs picks up, well, Lilligant for sure is a water resist that's picked up by Psychic Fangs. I think there's another one that I'm forgetting right now. Oh, Quaquaval. Yeah, Quaquaval and Lilligant both resist water, but are weak to Psychic. Grass Terra Blast is here just for Quagsire, basically. Nothing too fancy on this set, pretty straightforward. The defense investment... Oh, the HP is just a Life Orb number, that's what that is. And cool, we can move on. Something I didn't mention is that even though we did get the win last week, with a little bit of luck in Game 1, I did feel like I got back into some old, bad team building habits. And I really have made an effort this season to stay away from the mess that I had last season, where I had a lot of cool ideas, but I ended up with disjointed teams that didn't really fit well together. And so I've tried to play more of a... I've tried to have a better balance on my team with more natural synergies, Pokemon that can support each other and not just try to do cool things on their own and make a mess of it. And that's the main reason I drafted Magmar, and it's basically why it's here this week. Magmar with Follow Me can enable a Swords Dance or buy Thundurus some time to get up, maybe Weather and Terrain. How cool would that be? If things go a little sideways for the setup, it can create an opening for Beartic or Barraskewda to get an extra hit off, and of course, it just has good type synergy with my other Pokemon. It's just a good glue piece. That's why it's on my roster, and that's why I'm bringing it this week. Flame Body is also nice into potentially something like Quaquaval or Scrafty, and I have the Terra Grass to take a water attack from Quaquaval if I need to. Focus mainly on special defense with the set because, well, it's as simple as a lot of their threats are on the special side. I mean, I have mixed bulk here. I am calcing for things like Quaquaval and Lilligant, but also I want to really be sure that I take those hits from Goodra and from Vikavolt and Volcarona and them. So, Follow Me I had penciled in all along, and then really I just kind of went away from it for a while, came back to the rest of the set. There's nothing groundbreaking here. They have a lot of boosting options, so I brought Clear Smog. Heat Wave does damage, and they don't have Wide Guard, so I don't have to worry about it being a spread move. Helping Hand is good. That's Magmar. And finally, this was the easiest that it was yet to choose my 6th Pokemon, by the way. And so no mystery about the last one. It's Sylveon. Another Throat Spray set. I've never yet even been tempted to run anything other than a Throat Spray set on Sylveon. Maybe there will come an occasion for that, but every time I think, should I mix up my items on Sylveon, I just think, no, Throat Spray is just good. Hyper Voice activates the Throat Spray, gets off strong damage, notably annihilates Scrafty, which can be a bit of a thorn in the side of some of these other Pokemon otherwise, especially Iron Leaves. And then, given that their fairy resists are mainly fire types, I think Weather Ball in Rain is a pretty simple way to deal with that. The Terra Water is partly here to boost that, but it's largely just here for being a solid defensive type. Again, they can't really... Their team isn't really set up to exploit Sylveon's weaknesses super well. I mean, Goodra does get poison coverage. But if they're running random Terra Steel something, which they might want to do into some of my Pokemon, then I have the Water Terra to take their Terra Blast or whatever they might have. I maybe should have run my own Terra Blast as a precaution in case I don't get the weather up, but I just didn't feel like it. And I really kind of waffled on what to do with this third move slot. I penciled in Helping Hand at first just because Helping Hand is good. Nothing more to it than that. But given that their team is so setup focused, I thought I might as well throw in Yawn, disrupt a setup situationally if it comes up. I think Sylveon is more likely just spamming Hyper Voice. Oops. But I do have the option of Yawn to slow things down and prevent Oricorio from, or Volcarona from getting out of control if I want it. Calm Nature with no special defense investment makes some roll good. I don't know. I'm really bad at remembering what I'm calcing for. Maybe I'll take notes some week. Probably not next week. But there's definitely some kind of special hit on their team that Sylveon reliably takes with just the Calm Nature and no other investment in a special defense stat. And this week I didn't feel like I needed an especially bulky set. Their Pokemon are very hard to deal with if they're boosted, so there's not a ton of value that I see in calcing for that. And if they're unboosted, a lot of them don't really hit that hard anymore. And so I could put more special attack investment than I have in the past and maybe get off a really strong hit into something like a Goodra or a Quaquaval. So that's the team. A couple of basic... the goal is to overwhelm with offense. There are a couple of basic ways we can do it. We can do Electric Terrain plus Psyblade. We can do Rain plus the 2 Swift Swim Pokemon. Sylveon rounds out the offense and Magmar is the glue. Pretty simple. Hopefully we can win this dance competition that we have coming up, but we'll have to wait and see when we get to it. Okay, I'm pretty annoyed right now. I recorded the games live, as usual, only to find out a while later that I had completely failed to record any audio. I still don't really know what the issue was, but it took me a while before I could record audio again. I seem to have fixed it now, fingers crossed. And I guess we'll just talk over some replays. First thing I mentioned in the actual games was that we were playing fairly late on Sunday, and it had actually, thanks to scheduling quirks, been more than a full calendar week since I had recorded the Teambuilder part of the video. So if you could hear the live commentary, you'd notice it taking a little bit of time for some of the nuances of this team to come back to me. Fortunately, I kept it pretty simple this week. The Thundurus, of course, having Electric Terrain and Rain Dance, prioritizing Rain Dance with the Damp Rock. Iron Leaves with the Psyblade spam. And I also mentioned in the live commentary that I had looked up the Dancer ability after I recorded the Teambuilder part, and it actually doesn't only copy its partner's dance moves, it copies any Pokemon's dance move, I think. So I thought I might have to be a little more cautious about clicking Swords Dance. The Throat Spray, Sylveon, and the Magmar kind of tie things together, and then I have my 2 Swift Swim Pokemon, and at some point I remembered that Beartic was EV'd to be faster than uninvested Goodra in neutral weather. Looking over the opponent's team, they had the Pom-Pom Oricorio, Volcarona, Quagsire, Hisuian Lilligant, Goodra, and Vulpix, so they brought Sun stuff, and they did not bring any Psychic Resist, so the Psyblade looked pretty strong. Throughout the live commentary, I kept thinking about, well, what if it's Terra Steel Quagsire, because, of course, that is the one thing on their team that completely walls my Beartic. That got in my head a bunch in a way that I can't really capture in post-commentary here, but I was thinking I could lead Thundurus Iron Leaves, I could lead, like, Thundurus Beartic to abuse the Swift Swim into this team, though I'd have to be careful in the Weather Wars against the Vulpix, or I could lead Thundurus Sylveon as kind of a mid-ground, see what the opponent does, kind of play, and bring Iron Leaves and Beartic in the back to try to abuse whatever works best from there. And I think that is what I end up doing here. I think I lead Thundurus Sylveon. Let's see. Yes, that's right. Okay, into the Vulpix and Lilligant. So here I'm thinking this is a free Rain Dance because the Vulpix is already here. They can't change the weather. And I don't have to worry about the Lilligant being faster. But I am still worried about the Lilligant throwing off a Sleep Powder, so here, instead of staying in and attacking with Sylveon, I switch out to Iron Leaves. Iron Leaves doesn't seem especially threatened in Rain into these two Pokemon. Vulpix gets Sun Boosted Fire attacks, but is not very strong without the Sun Boost. And yeah, I'm really... Iron Leaves resists both of Lilligant's stabs, and I'm pretty concerned about the Sleep Powder here, so I do just make the switch to Iron Leaves while I set up the Rain Dance. However... as we see the switch here, they go for... Oh, it's Helping Hand. I actually didn't realize that in live commentary. That's why that KOs. Okay. Yeah, they just throw off a Helping Hand boosted Ice Spinner into Thundurus and one-shot it. I'm sure I didn't calc for that. So... But I get my Rain up, so I go Bear Tick here. They switch to Quagsire as they protect their Lilligant. I'll let that play out. And I realize here that... they're just going to pivot Vulpix back. Most likely, they're just going to pivot Vulpix back in to get the Sun up. That said, I'm a little concerned about the Quagsire. And what do I do here? I just played this a few hours ago. I think I double attack into the Quagsire here as it protects, and they pivot in their Vulpix. But I'm definitely worried that the Quagsire... Okay, a Rock Slide trying to cover for a switch. That turn. They pivot Vulpix into the Quagsire slot. Terra Grass... Lilligant, knock out my Bear Tick, and what is... Iron Leaves gets rid of the Lilligant. Okay. You know what? I'm almost glad now that my live commentary wasn't captured, because I can tell you for the rest of this game, I forgot that they had used their Terra. I barely even noticed the Terra Grass there, and I kept thinking, well, what if it's a random Terra whatever on Quagsire? In any case, I now have no Rain mode left. Thundurus is long gone, and Bear Tick, I've traded for Lilligant. But that's actually not a bad trade for me, as they have not a lot of offensive firepower with Vulpix and Quagsire, and I think they bring in their last Pokemon here. They do. It's Goodra. So their team is pretty slow, what they've brought here, apart from the Lilligant, and the Lilligant is gone. I'm down to my last two guys, Sylveon and Iron Leaves, but I'm actually not feeling all that bad in this position, because I can throw off a lot of strong attacks that are kind of hard for my opponent to respond to. That said, this Vulpix is about to be a menace, so let's see. Oh, I'm also thinking here about when to Terrasilize my Iron Leaves. I figured that's definitely what I'm going to do at this point. I have the Terra Fire on it, remember? And I'm worried about it trying to take Sun-boosted fire attacks from Vulpix. I think that Terra Fire is the safest thing. That said, I'm not in a rush to use it, because that, of course, opens up weaknesses into the Quagsire. So I think here I protect, and I throw off a Hyper Voice to chip their team, hoping to catch the Goodra, but I don't. And I think I Terra Fire on the next turn and just try to get attacks off into the Quagsire, and that might be where the Vulpix starts disrupting everything. Let's see. Just double protect here to scout out what they can do. I've completely forgotten at this point that the Goodra can't Terrasilize, so I'm just watching out for a random Terra type or any kind of strong attack. They switch to the Quagsire, and I think this is the time to Terra Fire. I can't be taking these flamethrowers, but they actually switch to using Snarl, which kind of nerfs my Sylveon. But not that much, right? Hyper Voice still does a fair bit, and now I get the boost to get back up to neutral. As they go for Drain Punch into Sylveon, I don't know why. I don't know what that play is. They mentioned in the Discord that they'd made a mistake in Game 1 that cost them the game. I don't really see... I don't think that's it. I don't know what it is. I didn't ask. But... I don't know what that Drain Punch into Sylveon was about. Maybe they forgot that I had no Pokemon left in the back. But here I protect and try to protect on the Baby Doll Eyes and try to chip. Oh no, okay. That's right. Because I've forgotten that they can't Terra, and I'm worried about what the Quagsire might do. Obviously, I expect it's going to have a ground attack, and it does. I protect here and try to force the Quagsire out with Yawn. That's right. And that works. And that sets up for me to use Swords Dance in this turn to get around the Baby Doll Eyes from the Vulpix. As Sylveon just keeps spamming Hyper Voice, obviously they can weaken it with Snarl, but there's not a whole lot more for Sylveon to do at this point in the game. Psyblade does pretty good damage into Goodra, and Scald does not do very much back, even outside of the strong Sunlight, as the Hyper Voice finishes the Goodra off, and they're down to just Vulpix and Quagsire. They just don't have the speed to pull this one out. Psyblade, and sure, they get a Snarl off, but the Hyper Voice is going to finish Quagsire off. The Vulpix actually survives at 1%, and that means Iron Leaves can get the last KO with the Psyblade. So now we jump to game 2, and I'm thinking that trying to play the Weather War really didn't work out for me last game, right? Like, Thundurus just got annihilated by that Ice Spinner from the Lilligant, and then they were able to pivot Vulpix around, and my Rain was pretty much a non-factor, plus Beartic, it got one very weak attack off and then it went down. So I'm not really feeling the Rain mode at this point. And I think instead, given that the Psyblade was so strong and I didn't even boost it that game, the Electric Terrain Psyblade combination is what I want to rely on in game 2. So I lead Thundurus, Iron Leaves. I bring Sylveon in the back because the Hyper Voice spam was very strong into my opponent's slower, bulkier Pokemon. And then I thought up for a little bit about all 3 of these options to bring in the back, because my opponent's team being fairly slow, even if I don't rely on the Rain, Beartic is not necessarily that bad, and it's very strong into Goodra, and it has the Rock Slide to cover the Fire types and Flying types. Barraskewda is interesting because of how incredibly fast it is even before Rain, but I end up bringing Magmar because I think that, I was able in game 1 to get Iron Leaves and Sylveon into a position where they could sit there and throw off attacks, and Magmar I thought could enable that pretty well with Follow Me and Helping Hand, plus my opponent doesn't have great answers to it, especially since I saw how little the Goodra Scald did to Terra Fire Iron Leaves in game 1. So I lead Thundurus and Iron Leaves, and I have Sylveon and Magmar in the back. They lead Vulpix and Lilligant again. I am expecting that Thundurus is going to be knocked out by an Ice Spinner, and to be completely honest, I'm forgetting that Ice Spinner clears terrain. So what do I do here? I think I just Electric Terrain and Psyblade the Lilligant. The other thing is I want to get rid of Lilligant quickly because going off of what they brought in game 1, it was the one fast threat. I can overwhelm Vulpix, Quagsire, Goodra with speed. They could bring Volcarona. It's not an especially fast Pokemon either. They could bring Oricorio. But going off of what they brought so far, I feel like I'm in a very comfortable position if I just get rid of the Lilligant. So that's my priority this turn. I think I Terra Iron Leaves turn 1 here as well, because I don't want it to take a Flamethrower, and I'm not at this point worried about a Sleep Powder, because that's not what they did in game 1. I think I go Electric Terrain, Terra Fire, Psyblade here, but let's see. They switch Vulpix out for Goodra, guess to get a Weather Pivot, but I go for the Terrain. Since they don't Helping Hand, Thundurus takes the Ice Spinner, and Psyblade picks up the Lilligant. I'm a little embarrassed at this point in the live commentary because I really did just forget that Ice Spinner clears the terrain. But the Lilligant being gone is huge. I feel very good about the game the rest of the way with that out of there. And I can get the terrain right back up because I still have my Thundurus this time. They go Terra Steel on the Goodra. I get my terrain back up and grab the Sword Stance. I feel pretty safe to do that because I saw how little damage the Scald did in neutral weather last game. And now they're using it in Sun. And yeah, it does 25%. Now I've got my boosted attack and I can play around the Baby Doll Eyes. Very cool attack, by the way, Baby Doll Eyes. But with the Sword Stance, I can play around that and get off a big hit into the Goodra with Sacred Sword. I switch to Magmar here. Pretty safe to do that. There's not really an offensive threat to it on the field, and I want to give that support to Iron Leaves with the Follow Me or the Helping Hand, as the situation may be, and give that a little bit more staying power and a little bit more attacking power to get around the Baby Doll Eyes, as +1 Sacred Sword does a lot of damage to Goodra, and Scald does not very much back. Here, right, Protect Heat Wave. That really wasn't a necessary play, but it works. With the Goodra having gone Terra Steel, Magmar can knock it out pretty safely. I can just keep Iron Leaves nice and healthy for this turn. I did kind of feel like I was wasting a turn of my Electric Terrain, but it worked out. As the Goodra is gone, the Vulpix goes for Snarl, but Magmar... I mean, my Pokemon don't care. Magmar does have a special attack, but it's not an attacker. Just a little bit of extra flair there. They go Volcarona, and... I'm concerned that this might have a Focus Sash, so I use Follow Me in case it survives the Psyblade. Of course, since I've gone Terra Fire, they can't get a Flame Body burn, so I'm not worried about that. But I just want to make sure that I can attack it again on the next turn if it has the Focus Sash. Since I use Follow Me here, I also redirect the Baby Doll Eyes into Magmar, so that's nice. and they don't have the focus sash, the terrain boosted side blade crit, just one shots the Volcarona, and they're down to just Vulpix, Helping Hand, side blade, GG. So, an interesting match for sure. I was just bluffing with this other replay here. It's actually just game 2 again. But Masquerade Men improved to 4-0. Halfway through the season, and we haven't taken a loss yet, and I believe the playoff format is not official yet, but most likely 6 out of 10 teams are going to make it, so we probably haven't quite clinched playoffs yet, but at this point things would have to go very badly for us to miss, but no point worrying about that right now. We still have half the season to play, so nothing to do from here but just keep dancing.